My family sued me. You owe us $6,000 a month. Talk to our lawyer. I said, fine. Then I cut their support. A week later, their lawyer was begging me to settle. I'm Ben, 27, a city planner. They hit a condo, forged a loan, and tried to destroy my career. Now They say family means sacrifice, and for a long time, I believed that with everything I had. My name is Ben. I'm 27 years old, and I live in Baltimore. I work as an urban transportation planner for the city. My job's mostly behind-the-scenes stuff like infrastructure strategy, zoning proposals, and pushing for things like bike lanes and greenways. It's not glamorous, but I care about it. I like building things that last. For the past 5 years, I've been the safety net for my entire family. My parents, Charles and Loretta, used to run an organic food store. It was their dream. Then the recession hit, and they lost everything. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, the whole nightmare. They were 58 when it all crumbled. No retirement savings, no second act, just bills and shame. They moved into a cramped apartment on the east side, and I stepped in. I paid their rent. I covered utilities. I even bought them groceries and paid off the remaining tax penalties to keep them from getting hounded by collectors. Then there was Eric, my little brother. He's 22 now, but back when this started, he had just turned 18. He dropped out of community college to pursue music production. He was talented, still is, I think, and I believed in him. I wanted him to have a chance, even if it meant I took on his phone plan and shelled out $300 a month for plugins, software, and whatever gear he swore was essential. For years, I made it work. I gave up traveling. I ate ramen when rent spiked. I skipped out on savings, barely scraped together a retirement plan. And not once, did they ask me how I was doing. Then something changed. Last November, I stood on a pedestrian overpass near the Jones Falls Trail, looking out over a proposed expansion zone I'd fought for. I thought, this is it. This is where I want to live. I found a small row house nearby, old bones, great structure, and I started saving. My plan was modest, a quiet place, a bike to work, and some breathing room. To make that happen, I had to cut back. So I sent them a message. Not a call, a message, because I knew my voice would shake. It was short, polite. I told them I'd still help, but less. $1,200 for my parents. $100 for Eric. I said I loved them. I said I hoped they understood. They didn't reply. Not a single word. For days, I stared at my phone, half expecting some passive-aggressive text or maybe even a guilt-tripping voicemail. But there was nothing. Just silence. And that scared me more than anger. I was knee-deep in transit logistics when everything fell apart. The Northeast Terminal was buzzing, kids running past benches, construction noise pounding from the South Corridor, and my walkie-talkie clipped to my vest, spitting out updates faster than I could track them. We've been working on a reroute for the Red Line expansion, and the team needed my input every 5 minutes. I barely had time to think, let alone breathe. That's when a guy in a dark blue jacket stepped in front of me. You Ben Kravitz? I paused, caught between checking a blueprint and sipping the lukewarm coffee in my other hand. Yeah, why? He pulled a manila envelope from a leather bag and handed it over. You've been served. For a second, I honestly thought it was a mistake. I even laughed a little. But when I looked down and saw the return address, Easton Legal Group, my stomach dropped. I stepped away from the noise and ducked into a maintenance corridor. Fluorescent lights flickered above me as I opened the envelope, flipping past the first page, then the second. My breath hitched when I saw the words. Petition for Family Support Enforcement, monthly obligation, $6,000. I couldn't believe it. My parents, my own family was suing me, not for back payments, not for a debt, but for a made-up concept they were calling customary duty and moral obligation. They were demanding $6,000 a month forever. According to the claim, I had created a standard of living they'd come to rely on, and they were entitled to maintain it. At the bottom was a note from their attorney. Future communication must be directed through legal representation. I just stood there, staring at the concrete wall. The rest of the world buzzed around me, oblivious. I wasn't even a person to them anymore. I was a salary, a walking, talking wallet. The worst part wasn't the money. I could handle that fight. It was what the lawsuit meant. It meant I was never their son in the way I thought I was. They didn't love me. They depended on me. And now that I tried to step away, they were dragging me back with a chain and padlock. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone. I didn't even know what I was going to say. I just needed someone, anyone, to tell me I wasn't going insane. That's when I remembered what Jonah from the zoning department had told me a couple weeks ago over lunch. If you ever need a shark, call Justine Bell. She doesn't blink. I found her number in my contacts. I must have saved it without realizing and hit call. She picked up on the third ring. Justine Bell. Hi. My name's Ben Kravitz. I think I need help. She didn't say anything for a beat, just the sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. Then, are you being sued? Or are you about to sue someone? Technically, both. Good, she said. That's more fun. And just like that, the couch offensive began. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, my chest tight, my mind flipping through 5 years of receipts, transfers, and sacrifice dreams like a bitter slideshow. Every late bill I paid. Every midnight transfer so my mom's insurance wouldn't lapse. Every time I told Eric not to worry about his phone bill so he could focus on building his brand. It was all replaying now, only darker, like I was finally watching it with the sound on. By morning, I had a plan, not an emotional reaction, a methodical, Cold, lawyer-approved course of action. Justine had already started drafting her response and told me to gather everything, every receipt, every Zelle transfer, every Venmo payment, every tax return and gift record. So that's what I did. I spent hours hunched over my desk, sorting statements, printing old screenshots, cross-referencing emails. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to make a timeline so clear even a board judge with a migraine could see the truth. The total stunned me. Over 5 years, I had given my parents a staggering $154,000. And Eric? $18,000, just shy of 19 grand for studio gear, apps, equipment, and a handful of missed rent payments when he didn't want to distract his roommates with day jobs. $172,000, gone. And now they were pretending it wasn't enough. The first thing I did was log into my bank and cancel every automatic transfer. The monthly $1,200 to my parents, gone. The $300 package to Eric, his Adobe Suite, Dropbox, SoundCloud Pro, all under my card, canceled in under a minute. And I didn't stop there. I blocked their access to my Prime account, killed the HBO Max subscription that everyone conveniently shared, cut the Wi-Fi password they used when visiting. Every small thread they had into my life, I cut it. At first, it felt good, powerful, but when I got to the music stuff, I hesitated. I hovered over the last app on the list, some plugin Eric had begged me to subscribe to, and I remembered a message he sent me 2 years ago. Thanks again for believing in me, Ben. I swear, I won't let you down. You're the only reason I'm still trying. I sat there staring at those words until my eyes stung. I canceled it anyway. Justine called me later that afternoon. Her voice was crisp, matter-of-fact, like always. So, here's the thing, she said. They don't have a legal leg to stand on. You've got a 5-year history of unconditional gifts, no contracts, no written expectations. This isn't court. It's extortion disguised as sentiment. I nodded slowly, phone pressed to my cheek. So, I'm not obligated? Not even a little. They can't sue you for being generous. I wanted to feel relief. I wanted that to be the moment the weight lifted. But all I felt was hollow. Because even if the law said I was free, my heart still hadn't gotten the memo. It started with a calendar invite labeled Personnel Meeting, Ethics Review. At first, I thought it was about a zoning conflict or a scheduling error. These things happened. Bureaucracy was messy. But when I stepped into the tiny glass-walled conference room and saw 2 HR reps, a department supervisor, and an attorney from the city's Office of Accountability all seated at the table, I knew something was wrong. Have a seat, Ben, one of them said, her tone gentle in that we don't want to seem kind of way. I sat, folded my hands, tried not to sweat through my button-up. There's been a formal complaint filed against you, the HR woman continued, alleging misuse of public funds and abuse of position during the planning phase of the Greenway expansion project. I blinked. I'm sorry. What? She slid a printed document across the table. My name was at the top. Below it, in a block of anonymous text, this employee has been leveraging city resources for personal gain, possibly manipulating routes to increase property value on targeted real estate. They thought I was cooking the books to boost the value of the row house I was saving for, the one near the new Greenway. I almost laughed. The accusation was absurd, but no one in that room looked amused. Do you have any response to this? The attorney asked, steepling his fingers. I swallowed hard, anger rising in my throat. Yeah, my response is that this is a load of garbage. Over the next 2 hours, I walked them through every spreadsheet, proposal log, time-stamped email, and committee vote I could access. I was lucky. I documented everything. I always had. Transit planning was a minefield of public scrutiny and political sabotage. I learned to leave paper trails thicker than the reports themselves. When the meeting ended, I was told I'd be cleared pending a full review, which was HR speak for this is technically over, but the stink won't fade for a while. Back at my desk, I sat in stunned silence. My coworkers, people I'd mentored, shared late-night takeout with, sweated through summer inspections beside, avoided my eyes. No one said it, but I saw the shift, the doubt. Is it true? That night, I texted Justine. I think Eric filed an anonymous complaint about my work. She replied in under a minute. Document everything. If he's extending this beyond the lawsuit, we counter with retaliation. I opened my file drawer, pulled out a new folder, and labeled it in thick black ink. Family war. Workplace attacks. If this was the direction they wanted to take it, fine. I'd meet them there, one documented lie at a time. It started with a post. A blurry photo of my parents standing on their apartment balcony, arms crossed, gazes set just so, like they were staring out over a battlefield. The caption, written in my father's familiar tone of performative humility, read, "We never asked for much, just love and respect. But our son chose a down payment over his family. We wish him well, even if he left us behind." Within an hour, it had over 200 shares and counting. I watched it unfold from my office, my phone buzzing with tagged screenshots and texts from friends. Dude, this about you? Is your dad okay? Want to talk? My stomach churned. I didn't even follow him on Facebook, but someone in my network had tagged me anyway, probably not realizing the damage it would cause. And then Eric chimed in. He reposted the photo to his Instagram story with a black screen and a single line of text. He left me without even a phone. I stared at that sentence like it was a foreign language. He made it sound like I'd thrown his phone into traffic and changed the locks. He didn't say that I'd covered 5 years of bills. that I'd kept him afloat while he flailed from one half-baked studio idea to another. He didn't say why I cut him off, just that I did. And in the court of public opinion, that was enough. I didn't respond. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But Justine had made it crystal clear. No posts, no comments. Screenshot everything. So that's what I did. I screenshotted the post, the shares, the comments. I made a folder and labeled it Social Defamation. May. I even downloaded a plug into archive deleted stories, just in case they got smart and tried to wipe the evidence. Then I remembered something. A while back, maybe 2 years ago, I'd been helping my mom figure out her email login. She'd forwarded me some of her tax docs, and one of the files stuck out. I'd saved it in a cloud folder and never opened it again. I searched for it now. There it was. Subject, Potential Property Transfer, Charles and Loretta. Inside, the email thread casually mentioned a lakefront condo in North Carolina. It was registered under my uncle's name for tax reasons, but the rental agreement showed a monthly income of $2,300. So much for being destitute. I leaned back in my chair, letting the hypocrisy sink in. They were crying for help online while cashing rent checks on a hidden asset they never disclosed. And now they were trying to turn the world against me, to guilt me into breaking. I opened a new message to Justine and attached the email. My subject line was simple. Found this. Could be useful. She replied in 5 minutes. It's more than useful. It's game-changing. Let them scream into the internet void. I had evidence in the long game. It was almost midnight when I cracked. I'd spent the whole evening scrolling through comments on my dad's viral post. Strangers calling me soulless, greedy, even the type of person who'd leave his mother to die in a gutter. They didn't know me. Didn't know the years I gave up so my parents wouldn't lose their apartment. Didn't know I'd sacrificed promotions, relationships, my life, so they could stay afloat. And now, because I dared to stop, I was a villain. At 12:13 a.m., I opened my laptop and started typing. Not to the internet, not to Eric, to Mr. Easton, their lawyer. Subject, regarding your client's future. Body, effective immediately, their rent, utilities, car insurance, and health premiums are their problem. I'll no longer fund their lifestyle while being slandered. If they want a war, they've got one. Then, I hit send without a second thought. 15 minutes later, I regretted it. Justine called me the next morning early, before I even had coffee. Did you email Easton last night? I rubbed my eyes. Yeah, probably shouldn't have. You think? Her tone wasn't angry, just tight, precise. You just gave him ammo. That email reads like retaliation, which makes this a lot harder to frame as self-defense. I sank into my couch. I know. I get it, she cut in. They're pushing your buttons. But this is chess, not a street fight. No more solo moves, Ben. Got it. I spent the next few days in full damage control mode, quiet, composed, like she told me. No more emotional emails. No late-night doom scrolling. No talking to friends about it, even offhand. And then it happened. Another complaint. This time to the Department of Urban Development. A formal ethics grievance claiming I had skipped inspections on 2 city bridge projects, suggesting negligence and possible safety risks. The accusations were detailed, too detailed to be guessed. It included timeline charts, project names, even vendor conflicts. It had to come from someone inside or close to someone inside. I knew exactly who. Eric. He used to help me draft grant language years ago when he was between passions. He knew the buzzwords, knew how to make something sound corrupt even if it wasn't. But what he didn't know was how obsessively I documented everything. Within hours, I pulled up my inspection logs, timestamped site reports, contractor sign-offs, and digital badge entries. The allegations weren't just false. They were laughably bad. I forwarded everything to Justine. Her reply came fast. Beautiful. This is a pattern now. A smear campaign. Documented retaliation for reduced financial support. You're no longer just a defendant. You're the victim of targeted harassment. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt the tide shifting. They weren't organized. They were desperate. And desperation makes people sloppy. The hearing was held in a modest courtroom on the 6th floor of the city's Family Civil Division building. Gray walls, humming fluorescents, and folding chairs that seemed intentionally designed to make you uncomfortable. It felt more like traffic court than the battleground it was about to become. My palms were sweating as I sat beside Justine at the defense table. Across from us, my parents sat with stiff expressions, eyes watery but theatrical. Charles wore a navy blazer I hadn't seen since my college graduation. Loretta clutched a tissue she hadn't used, occasionally dabbing at nothing. Between them sat Eric, his hair slicked back, wearing an ill-fitting suit he probably borrowed. He kept his eyes on the judge's bench. Mr. Easton, their attorney, cleared his throat and rose first. His voice was calm, almost gentle, as he spoke about familial duty, implied promise, and moral precedent. For 5 years, he said, Mr. Kravitz supported his parents and brother without complaint. His family structured their lives around that support. Then, with no discussion, he cut them off, coldly, indefinitely. This has left them facing eviction, loss of health coverage, and emotional distress. Your Honor, we are not asking for punishment. We're asking for continuity, for justice. He sat down like a man who just dropped the mic. Justine didn't even blink. She stood slowly, walked up to the front like she was taking her time picking a lock, and started with a tone so calm it sent chills down my spine. Continuity, she echoed. Let's define that. She pulled out our binders, 4 of them, and laid them neatly before the court clerk. What my client provided was not a contract. It was generosity. And here, we have records. Over $170,000 transferred with no written agreement, no verbal condition, and no expectation of return. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, nodded slowly, flipping through the first binder. Justine turned toward Mr. Easton. Opposing counsel refers to moral obligation. I'd like to address character. Let's look at intentions. She motioned to me. I stood and walked a USB to the clerk. It was loaded with screenshots, text records, bank statements, everything. The judge glanced at the monitor as images flashed, Facebook posts accusing me of abandonment, Eric's Instagram story, a copy of the complaint letter to my department, signed anonymous, but submitted using Eric's personal email by mistake. The judge raised an eyebrow. Then Justine brought out the trump card. Your Honor, she said, in their filings, the plaintiffs described themselves as financially destitute. Yet we've obtained documents showing they received $2,300 per month in rent from a waterfront condo in North Carolina, owned by a relative, but leased under their control. She passed the documentation to the judge. Gasps from the other table. Eric shifted in his seat. My dad whispered something to Mr. Easton, who didn't respond. And finally, Justine continued. We have reason to believe this lawsuit was not only retaliatory, but strategically premeditated. She pulled out one last folder. 5 years ago, when the family store collapsed, a loan was taken out in Ben's name. A sizable one. He was 19 at the time, attending grad school. This loan helped fund the last inventory shipment before their bankruptcy. The judge frowned. Is this substantiated? Yes, Justine said, clicking the remote. A scanned image of the loan agreement appeared on the screen, with my forged signature in uneven ink. The next slide? A message from Eric's old email to my mom. Just sign for him. He never checks this stuff. I sat frozen. I'd never seen that message before. The courtroom was silent. You could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Finally, the judge turned to Mr. Easton. Do your clients wish to respond to the allegations of forgery and concealed assets? He looked at my parents, then at Eric, who looked like he was about to throw up. No, Your Honor, not at this time. The judge looked back at us. Well then, she said quietly, I believe this hearing just got a lot simpler. The ruling came 3 days later. I was alone in my apartment, sitting at the kitchen table with my phone in one hand and a glass of untouched orange juice in the other when Justine called. You won, she said flatly. I didn't say anything. I just let those 2 words hang there, barely real. They dismissed the suit with prejudice, she continued. Judge also awarded full legal fees. You're walking away clean. And, this part's rare, she included a formal condemnation of their conduct on the record. I blinked. She what? She called their actions manipulative, retaliatory, and deeply unethical. It'll go in the court summary. For the first time in months, I felt something shift in my chest. Not relief, not yet, but the first crack in the pressure dome that had been holding me hostage. A week later, Justine forwarded me a new email from Mr. Easton. The subject line read, Proposal for quiet settlement. Apparently, they wanted the court record sealed. They were offering to drop all appeals in exchange for silence. No further charges, no pursuit of criminal investigation for the forgery. Just peace. Justine didn't even hesitate. No, absolutely not, she typed back. We're done here. Later that same afternoon, Eric texted me. Eric, I'm sorry man. I didn't want it to go this far. I just lost my car. Everything's falling apart. Attached was a blurry photo of his old Toyota, hooked up to a tow truck. A few months ago, I might have felt a pang of sympathy. This time, I didn't even blink. I forwarded the message to Justine, then replied with 4 simple words. Talk to my lawyer. 2 days later, Justine filed a restraining order against further harassment on my behalf. The judge signed off almost immediately, citing the social media attacks and workplace complaints as coordinated emotional targeting. The following week, the other shoe dropped. The judge ordered the immediate liquidation of my parents' hidden lakefront condo to satisfy the attorney fees they now owed me. When I saw the court-issued property notice stapled outside their apartment building a few days later, I didn't linger. There were no more phone calls, no apologies, no last-minute pleas for mercy, just silence. But it wasn't the cold, manipulative silence they'd used to punish me before. This was a silence born of consequence, of collapse. I didn't gloat. I didn't post anything. I didn't even tell my coworkers, most of whom had cautiously re-welcomed me after the false ethics claims were cleared. I just sat in my quiet apartment one night, staring at my mostly packed boxes, and realized I was finally untethered. They had spent years using me, redefining love as obligation, turning family into a slow bleed. But now, the chain had snapped, and I wasn't going back. The first thing to fall was the blog. A clickbait site had picked up my dad's viral Facebook post weeks ago and run with it, plastering my name alongside headlines like Son Abandons Elderly Parents for Real Estate and Millennial Greed Breaks a Family. It had been humiliating. Worse, It had felt irreversible. But Justine had sent a cease and desist with every screenshot, court document, and the judge's statement attached. They folded fast. The retraction was buried in fine print, but it was there, posted online with a bland apology. The Turner family matter has been legally resolved. Previous claims made by this outlet have been retracted. It didn't make me feel victorious, just clean, like scrubbing off something that had stuck for too long. At work, the tide shifted almost overnight. The ethics complaints had been officially dismissed, and word started to spread. A few coworkers stopped by my desk more often, some casual, some awkward. I never believed that stuff, one of them told me. It just didn't sound like you. That was the most I got. And honestly, it was enough. 2 weeks later, my promotion finally came through. It had been pending since January. Senior planner, regional development lead. I'd been told I was next in line, back when the whispers started. Then everything paused. But now the department head came by my office with a manila folder and a quiet smile. "You earned it," she said. "Just sorry it took this long." I sat there staring at the offer letter long after she left. It wasn't the raise. It wasn't the new title. It was the fact that I wasn't invisible anymore, not just the guy who handled everyone else's problems behind the scenes. I had fought for my name, and I'd won. I threw myself back into the bridge project that had become my anchor during the chaos. It was a narrow pedestrian expansion along the river, part of the city's new green corridor. Nothing flashy, but it mattered. I supervised the final steel pour. I approved the concrete footings. I stood on that half-finished platform one gray morning with my hands in my pockets and watched as 2 interns debated load tolerances and sketchpad layouts. "Good work," I told them, and meant it. Later that week, I got a tip from an old mutual acquaintance. Eric had lost his marketing job. No specifics, just budget cuts, and a vague mention of him being difficult to manage. I didn't reach out. The last thing I heard about my parents was that they were living in a rundown duplex near the train tracks. The condo was gone, the bank account empty. They hadn't contacted me, not a call, not a letter. And maybe that hurt more than anything, because even after all they did, I had still hoped for something. We were wrong. Thank you. But silence was all that ever came. So I moved forward, because now I wasn't just building bridges across rivers. I was building one back to myself. 10 months later, I stood barefoot in my new home by the river, the morning light spilling through the oversized windows onto the hardwood floors. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't just come from walls and insulation, but from peace. The house wasn't big, just 2 bedrooms, a long kitchen, and a narrow backyard lined with river stones. But it was mine, bought with the savings I'd protected, the bonus from my promotion, and a down payment I didn't have to feel guilty about. Not anymore. The best part? The overpass sculpture. I had it made by a local metalworker, a stylized arc of weathered steel, inspired by the Greenway Bridge I'd helped bring to life. It hung on the living room wall, heavy and deliberate, the weld marks left raw on purpose. A reminder of everything. I sat at the kitchen table that first Saturday morning with a blank notebook and a black pen, just staring at the empty page. Then I started writing, not about the legal battle, not about the betrayal, but about the patterns, the ways I'd given too much, the things I'd ignored, the silence I accepted. And slowly, I wrote my way through it. Page by page, I traced how I got here, not just the facts, but the feelings. The hollow after every ignored thank you, the dread every time I opened my bank app, the bitterness that built like rust in my chest. By the time I stopped, the sun had shifted across the sky and my coffee had gone cold. It wasn't just journaling, it was architecture, a blueprint for something new. That night, I hosted my housewarming. It wasn't fancy, just takeout Thai food, folding chairs, and the people who had stuck by me through it all. Coworkers, 2 college friends, and Marcus, my oldest friend, the kind of guy who texts just checking in without needing a reason. When Marcus raised his paper cup for a toast, he didn't say much, just smiled, looked around the room, then back at me. "To Ben," he said, "the guy who used to carry everyone, and finally remembered to carry himself." Everyone laughed, and I did too. But deep down, it hit hard, because it was true. After the guests left, I turned off the porch light, walked through my quiet house, and stood by the sculpture one last time before bed. I reached out and ran my fingers along the cold steel, feeling the grooves, the stubborn texture of something made to last. This home wasn't revenge. It wasn't proof. It was a boundary, a beginning. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for why I built it.